Testing, 1 2 1 2. Do it one more time. My check, 1 2 1 2. All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to say, Kal Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Shem Yahushai, Shem Harakakadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, shalom. All right, as always, with the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, we come out in the streets of America, known as Babylon the Great, according to Bible prophecy. All right, and as well, we have like-minded brothers, all right, throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, and we, the hopeful elected in the Lord of the nation of Israel. Okay, we stand upon our feet. All right, we stand upon our feet in these latter days. Okay, to preach the Holy Bible. Okay, which are the words of the Heavenly Father, whose name is Yahweh. All right, in the name of His begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, via the Ruach Wadash, the Holy Spirit. Okay, and out of the Bible, what do we preach? Okay, we preach that, all right, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the true Israelites, according to the Bible. Okay, and that the Heavenly Father, whom this world calls God, whose name is Yahweh, all right, in the name of His begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, okay, is only the God of the Israelites, okay, known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as you read throughout the scriptures, okay. And in these times, we call, all right, our people back to Yahweh Shema Shai, our remnant in the elect, okay, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, all right, and then what? That ultimately Yahweh Shema Shai is getting ready to bring destruction, all right, divine judgment and divine destruction upon America, Babylon the Great, okay, in these end times, all right, and at the same time is getting ready to send His begotten Son Yahweh Shai back to deliver the elect, the remnant of His people, okay, out of the destruction that's coming down the pipe upon America, Babylon the Great, and as well throughout the four corners of the earth, okay? And ultimately, when Yahweh comes back and brings judgment upon these heathen nations, right, starting with America, Babylon the Great, okay, the elect, us, the hopeful elect, okay, that's going to get beamed up to the chariot of Yahweh. Eventually, we're gonna come down from the chariot in those new bodies, all right, incorruptible, indestructible bodies, all right, and set up the kingdom of heaven on earth, the tabernacle of David, okay, which is going to restore the earth back to paradise again, Eden, okay, clean up the earth, clean up the waters, clean up the air, right, and restore this earth back to what Yahweh Shema Shai intended to be in the beginning, okay, under the sons of God, starting first and foremost with the Son of the Most High God, Yahweh Shai, all right. As I always like to bring out, as I always like to start off with, 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verse 1, it says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, said the Lord." Verse 2, "And cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true." And you see in these latter days, Yahweh Shema Shai, Yahweh Shema Shai is most certainly showing His elect, okay, that His words are faithful and true. Because look at what's going on earth, okay, more wars and rumors of war, more division, okay, economic collapse, financial collapse, okay, global market strains, right? All these things and more are coming down the pipe, all right, are happening in these latter days to show us, the hopeful elect, okay, that the words of Yahweh Shema Shai are most certainly faithful and true, okay, because even like the scripture speaks about in Peter's, we have a more sure word of prophecy, okay, and we see it coming to pass more and more in these latter days, leading up to the day of the return of Yahweh Shai, all right. 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 1 again, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, said the Lord." And the Lord has put His words of prophecy in the mouth of His men, all right, His prophets, His apostles, His teachers, starting with the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, right? Down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect, as well as the men that labor before them. Going back to our forefather, Abba Bivens. You see that? The Lord has put his holy words of the Holy Bible, okay, in our mouths. Lord will not give up that number of the hopeful elect. You see that? And it says, verse 3, fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. Verse 4, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Yep. And that's just coming to 2/3 of our people. As many of our people at this point, they know about the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, they see the Hebrew Israelite camps all over the place, and especially the men of the Lord. Okay, preaching and prophesying. Okay, going hard in the spirit, on fire in these outer days. Okay, speaking the words of prophecy in the ears of our people, but yet you still have many of our people still scoffing, game playing, still scoffing against the camps, right? Still scoffing against this Hebrew Israelite ministry, right? Still scoffing at prophecy, okay? And ultimately still playing games, right, in the midst of these times that we're in. Because pretty much we're in the time of war right now, okay? Everything is being shut down, right? All the birth of the land is gone. The bread and circus is all played out, okay? Babylon the Great and the Small are at war in the so-called Middle East, right, which is really West Asia, okay? This whole war right now is in a spirit of war right now. So therefore, what? War, a time for war, calls for what? A time to be serious, a time to be solemn. You see that? And that's the spirit that the men of the Lord, starting with the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, down to least of us, are in right now more than ever. Okay, we're in a serious, solemn time. All right, in these times of war, because these times that's before us are show us more than ever that what? Okay, let's get it. All right, these times that we're in, okay, heavy times of wars and rumors of war, conflict, strife, right? Economic instability between these different nations, especially here in Babylon the Great America. These times ultimately show us the hopeful elect that what? This is Romans chapter 13 and verse 11. It says, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believe. You see that? So all these things we see going on in the news, current events, in prophecy, okay, all show us the hopeful elect at the end of the day, and what? That our salvation is nearer than when we believe. Okay, but the interesting thing is that we're not, although we know we're at the end of Esau's world, right? We're in the end times, but we're not quite, just at the end yet, because we know that there's more prophecies that has to come to pass before Yahushua comes back. Esau coming down great wrath, persecuting the men of the Lord. Okay, attempted to establish this NWO agenda. All right, come on, that the MOTB, the micro-CEO, is setting up his technocracy. We know that all these things must come to pass, okay, before the return of Yahushua. All right, so therefore we know we're at the end, but we're not just quite at the end just yet. Okay, wait, there's more, like brothers like to say. All right. All right, so going back to 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 3 again. Fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. All right. For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Yeah, 2/3 of our people are going to die in their unfaithfulness. Point blank, period. Okay, because the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shah, has given our people more than ample enough time, right? Sending this prophets out beat times, okay, consistently, week in and week out, day in and day out, doing these camp speakings, doing these lessons, okay? The Lord has given out, our people, okay, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, more than enough time to seek Yahweh Shema Shai while he may be found, okay, while his men are still out on the highways and the byways, doing these lessons, doing these videos, exhorting daily, right? But 2/3 of our people, they still want to remain complacent. They still want to remain in their ignorant mindset, okay? They still want to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Okay, they still want to lean upon Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, for answers and solutions to their problems. Okay, and this world doesn't offer any answers or solutions to our problems as Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. So therefore, what? The only answer and solution at this point, okay, which is always the only answer and solution, okay, is what? Returning back to Yahweh Shema Shah while he may be found. Okay? Because as scripture says in Isaiah 10, Isaiah chapter 10, in verse 20, it says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob shall no more again stay upon him that smote them. See that? So in these latter days, the remnant, all right, the hopeful elect, us, the hopeful elect, would no longer stay upon him that has smote us. And who's that talking about? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. All right? We would no longer lean upon Esau's pseudoscience, his false history, his false religion, his propaganda, his media, okay, his false education for understanding of the world that surrounds us, right? But instead, what? It says, but shall stay upon the holy, but shall stay upon the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shah, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. You see that? So in these latter days, the elect, the remnant, low and not there, the number, we will stay upon Yahweh Shema Shah, okay, in truth, okay, overcome all of Esau's lies and corruption by returning back to Yahweh Shema Shah in truth, right? While this truth is still available on the internet. You see that? And so, as you can see from the theme of today's camp, okay, measure thou the time diligently, okay? And of course, that's inspired by 2nd Ezra chapter 9 and verse 1. In the KJV, it says, he answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, okay, so measure thou the time, okay, measure thou the time diligently in itself, all right, and we the men of the Lord, how do we measure the signs of the times? According to prophecy, okay, especially primarily that of Daniel, the 7th chapter, okay, which goes into the 4 different beasts or 4 different empires that were ruled throughout the earth, throughout secular history, okay, leading up to the return of Yahweh Shai and the kingdom of heaven being established. Okay, of course, you have the first beast in Daniel 7 being what? The ancient Babylonians, right? And the second beast being what? The ancient Persian and Median Empire. Okay, the third beast being the ancient Greek Empire, right? And then the fourth beast being what? The ancient Western Roman Empire, which, mind you, by the way, all those same kingdoms in empires that's listed in Daniel 7 were all different kingdoms and empires that we as Israelites were scattered throughout, okay, all throughout history, right? As a matter of fact, as it even speaks of in, was that Zechariah? Zechariah, the 1st chapter. Yep, this is Zechariah chapter 1 and verse 18. It says, then lifted I up mine eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns. Okay, and I said unto the angel that talked with me, what be these? And he answered me, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. You see that? And the 4 horns that it's speaking of are the 4 beasts or 4 empires that's mentioned in Daniel, the 7th chapter. Okay, it's going into the same thing. The 4 horns, the 4 beasts, right? And as I said, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Okay, so a major part of us as Israelites being scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth, even to this very day, is because of these all these different empires, all right, in different kingdoms that have risen into power. Okay, all throughout secular history. Okay, and here we are at the tail end of the fourth beast, okay, that little horn that you read of in Daniel 7 that would pretty much emerge out of the fourth beast out of ancient Rome, which should ultimately revive ancient Rome, starting with the Renaissance period of the 1400s, okay, which marked what? Esau coming out of the caves of the Caucasus Mountains, right? To kickstart off what? The so-called Renaissance period, which Renaissance means what? Rebirth, okay? And what was the Renaissance the rebirth of? Ancient Greco-Roman philosophies, ways, idea, and mindsets and values and religions all throughout the four corners of the earth, okay? And it's all of that, okay, all that wickedness that Esau did coming out of the Renaissance has all led to what we see here today. Okay, America, NATO, and the EU. Okay, to officially, bring back the ancient Greco-Roman ways. Okay, so we're at the tail end of the little horn of the fourth beast spoken of in Daniel 7. Okay, this is all major ways of how we measure the time diligently in itself. You see that? Daniel 7. All right. Daniel 7, damn scoffer right here, holding up a damn rosary bead. Hey man, hey, and stuff like this, all right, which y'all couldn't see it behind the camera on the road, but you see stuff like this is why Yahweh Shema Shai set up his men to go out and prophesy, teach, and warn our people. So that what? So that those of our people that are still stuck in that damn folly, okay, still stuck in that BS, still stuck in the ways of Babylon the Great and these heathen nations, they're going to die in their unfaithfulness, point blank, period. Okay, without remedy. When it's all said and done, the blood of the 2/3 of all people that's going to die on this side are going to be off the hands of the Lord's men. That's constantly warning them, right? Giving them exhortation, okay, and showing them the signs of the times. You see that? But but going back to 2nd Ezra 9 and verse 1 again, it says, he answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before. And as a matter of fact, let's look up what does the word diligent mean? Okay? Measure thou the time diligently. All right? What does the word diligent mean? All right, so this is the word diligent from etymonline.com. It says constant in effort to accomplish what is undertaken. Okay, constant in effort to accomplish what is undertaken. Then it also goes into attentive, assiduous, careful. All right, it also goes into single out, okay, to value highly, esteem, prize, love, okay, hey, so we're commanded to pretty much love prophecy and love the words of Yahweh Shema Shai, because this is our first love. You see that? The words of Yahweh Shema Shai, this truth, this gospel, this testimony, this is our first love. Okay, this is what Yahweh Shema Shai has commanded us first and foremost to be diligent into, to be attentive into. Right? It says, okay, yeah, so that's pretty much the point. So as it said again, I'm gonna read it again. The word diligent from etymonline.com. It says constant in effort to accomplish what is undertaken. See that? So constant in effort. So constantly with effort are we to measure the signs of the time. Okay, measure out the time diligently in itself. And again, how do we measure the signs of the time that's in the earth? By going into prophecy, going into the words of Yahweh Shema Shai, okay? To see how close you are to the return of Yahweh Shai, okay, and how close we are to our salvation as the hopeful elect. You see that? And as a matter of fact, let's go to 2nd Ezra 9 in the GMT, all right? 2nd Ezra 9 in verse 1, and this is in the GMT. It says, he answered, consider all these things very carefully, okay, diligently, right? It says, when you see that some of the signs I have told you about have appeared, verse 2, you will know that the time has come when the Most High Yahweh will bring judgment on the world he has created. Okay? So we're in a time as things are moving more and more towards war, right? Economic collapse, instability everywhere, division, all of these things until what? That Yahweh Shema Shah is getting ready to bring judgment upon the earth at an all-time high. Okay, like a time like never before. Jacob's trouble, right? And it says again, verse 2, 2 Corinthians 9, verse 2 in the GNT, you will know that the time has come when the Most High Yahweh will bring judgment on the world he has created. Okay, verse 3, there will be earthquakes, all right, which we see that happening throughout the earth. Okay, even as a recent, down here in Louisiana, you had an earthquake. Okay, and here in Louisiana is a place where it's rarely known for having earthquakes. Okay, so this is just one sign amongst many signs showing that we're in the end times. Okay, and even Yahweh Shah himself, okay, spoke to this in Matthew 24. Earthquakes in diverse places, wars and rumors of war, famines, pestilence, okay, so on and so forth, right? So it says, 2 Corinthians 9, verse 3 in the GNT again, there will be earthquakes, national rebellions, okay, what is national rebellions? Uproars of the people as a reason in KJV, okay, mass protests, mass uproars, okay, and we definitely see that happening throughout the four corners of the earth, especially here in America, okay, more and more, all right, more and more, the people here in America are growing more and more pissed off against their government, okay, the Biden administration, this current Trump administration, all right, and especially looking at this current Trump administration, as we see Esau going throughout the earth and doing what he does best, waging war, coming down with the sword, all under false pretexts, false narratives, false propaganda, right? Waging war with Iran, okay, all being spearheaded by the small hats ultimately, right? And as of right now, you have many of these MAGA people all divided up over the war with Iran. Some are for it, right? But then you have many that's against it, okay? Because what? A lot of these MAGA Edomites, they're starting to have regrets on voting for that guy Trump, okay? Because they were all of the opinion that Trump was going to come in office, right? Right. So like many of them were of the opinion that Trump was going to come in office and restore America back to its former glory again, make America great, restore the economy again, right? Restore Christianity in America again, right? With the whole, white Jesus and Christian nationalist rhetoric, right? And ultimately, many of these Edomites were of the opinion that Trump was going to come back in office and restore, okay, Edomite dominance here in America once again, all right? But now you see, okay, just a year and some change into the Trump administration, we see that he hasn't kept none of his promises that he made to the so-called American people, okay? All we've been seeing him do was further put more hell upon the middle class, slash jobs left and right, okay? Do nothing to restore the economy, right? And ultimately, continue to invest billions into the small hats, right? And invest billions into ICE, the DHS, right? To put more hell upon American citizens, right? And even now, you have the DHS, okay, currently buying up all kinds of warehouses, all throughout the United States. And we ultimately know what that's all going to be used for: detention centers, concentration camps, okay? But as we've been seeing over this past year and some change, okay, this Trump administration hasn't kept none of its so-called promises. And now you're starting to see, all right, now you're starting to see, okay, a number of, MAGA Edomites now starting to, regret vote for Trump. And I want to show this video real quick, okay? This is a video that's apparently been going viral on the internet over these past few days, okay? as y'all can see right here, and the source of this video is from Reese Waters, if y'all can read that. All right, so this is fair use, fair use. I'm gonna let this play.
You regret your vote right now?
Well, between him and her, I thought he was the better choice, but honestly, I miss my Uncle Joe. I was a nobody, and I was balling then. Now, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even show you $5 in my pocket.
We spoke to Trump voters here.
So this guy right here, it could be Edomite, but whatever the case, he was a MAGA, okay, a MAGA, Trump voter, right? But as y'all just heard, okay, he's having regrets over voting for his guy Trump, okay, and as you just heard, now he's crying for his Uncle Joe back, all right, referring to who? Joe Biden, okay, and this just goes to show that, or rather, shall I say, that just further goes to show that this whole this whole left-right paradigm, okay, between the Republicans and Democrats, is literally all one big psyop at the end of the day. Okay, it's all witchcraft, because here it is. About 4 or 5 years ago, back in 2020, you had millions of people across America crying to get Trump out of office, okay, to vote Biden in office, right? But then here we are, 4 or 5 years later, okay, now, you had a lot of these Edomites that were crying for Trump to get back in office, right? Millions of them voting, for Trump to get back in office, to make America great again, make the Edomite in America great again, right? Bring back Christianity and white Jesus and restore the economy back again. But here it is now, as we see in March 2026. Now you have certain Edomites regretting voting for Trump and crying for Biden to get back, crying for Biden, okay, or crying that Kamala Harris should have won, okay. Which if Kamala Harris would have gotten in office instead of Trump, okay, things would be even worse than what we see right now, okay. You would have more freakism, more alphabet agenda, okay, more anti-Yahweh Shema Shai energy here in Babylon the Great, and ultimately more witchcraft in the earth. You see that? So either way it goes, whether these elites put a Democrat or Republican in office before you people, okay, it's all ultimately to screw you damn people over. All right? And ultimately we know, according to prophecy, that this whole left versus right psyop is all going to lead you so-called American people into the MOTB system. All right? As scripture says, this is Revelation 13 and verse 11, it says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth." Okay, this other beast is speaking of America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and it says, "And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." And of course, the 2 horns like a lamb being what? Okay, the 2-party political system here in America, the Democrats versus Republicans, right? So this whole left versus right paradigm. Okay, 1.4. All right, liberals versus conservatives, red state versus blue state. Okay, they all being presented before these people like a lamb, right? And when you deal with a lamb in the scriptures, a lamb can be likened to a Messiah or some form of savior. Just like Yahweh Shah Mashiach himself is likened to a lamb, right? The lamb of the Most High Yahweh, right? Well, guess what? These political parties, whether Democrat, Republican, okay, conservative, liberal, they're constantly being presented before these so-called American people as some form of savior or Messiah, right? But as it is read, it's all going to lead to both of these parties speaking like a dragon, okay? Draconian laws, draconian measures, okay? Taking away these people's constitutional rights, right? And whatever little rights they have here and there, okay? Their First Amendment rights, their Second Amendment rights, their Fourth Amendment rights, okay? All these people's constitutional rights are getting ready to be done away with, as all right, the elites of Esau Edom are continuing to systematically collapse the society, collapse the economy, collapse the government structure, collapse the politics, okay, and bring these American people into the NWO agenda, like sheep being led to the slaughter. You see that? And so, hey, these are the times that we're in. okay? Times of war, mass confusion, mass division everywhere, okay? Economic instability, okay? Political instability, right? We're in a time of Esau being exposed at an all-time high and being made bare, okay? Was that could only lead to one thing, as Esau is being exposed more and more, right? And shameful spewing is being put upon his glory. It's all going to lead to him coming down with great wrath, all right? It's all going to lead to Esau, Edom, pretty much waging war, okay, upon all people throughout the earth, and especially waging war against us, the hopeful elect, the men of the Lord, that have the testimony, okay, to bring this devil ultimately to judgment by Yahweh Shema Shai. You see that? So let's go back. Let's go back to 2nd Ezra 9. All right. Some water. Second Ezra 9 and verse 3 in the GNT again. It says there will be earthquakes, national rebellions, international intrigues. Okay, international intrigues. What does the word intrigues mean? Okay. The word intrigue from Oxford Dictionary of English means, it says arouse the curiosity or interest of. Okay, then it says definition number 2, make secret plans to do something illicit or detrimental to someone. Okay, and we definitely see nations doing that in the earth these latter days. Okay, coming together, conspiring together, right, to form all these secret plots and plans. Okay, to do nothing but destroy, rape, rob, murder, confuse the people. All right, and hey, we see an intrigue going on right now between, okay, the U.S. and the small heads seeking to, plot to destroy the people of Iran. Okay, and mind you, we see that whole conflict in Iran is, little by little backfiring against America. Okay, America is using up all kinds of, missiles and rockets and different ballistic arsenal. Okay, to so say topple the regime of Iran, and we clearly see it's not working. Okay, but yet leave it up to the Western media, right? You listen to the Western media, they'll have you thinking that America has that war, completely under their control. That as if they're the ones, out there dominating, right? Destroying the people of Iran. But meanwhile, okay, the only main thing that America and the small hats have destroyed over there in Iran was that school. Okay, that school, full of children, right? Which we know Esau, Edom, okay, that was ultimately a sacrifice done by by Babylon the Great and the small heads. Okay, because we know how these Edomites love to love to off children, right? Do odious works. Okay, Epstein is one example among many examples, right? But we know how these devils get down when it comes to harming children. Okay, that's one of their ritualistic ways of forwarding the agenda and the work of Satan throughout the earth. Okay, because children, ultimately, what do children represent? Okay, they represent creatures of innocence, right? Youthful, okay, happy, rejoiceful, innocent, pure, right? So when these Edomites, starting with the small hats, okay, when they do the things that they do to children throughout the earth, okay, odious works, drinking BLOOD, okay, sacrificing and offering these children, essentially, what they're doing, okay, symbolically with those odious works is they're defiling and corrupting anything that's that represents purity or innocence, right? Because that's how these devils get down. They literally go throughout the earth, corrupting and defiling and destroying everything that Yahweh Shema Shai created to be, pure, innocent, clear, okay, good for mankind. You see that? So, this world is literally ran by a bunch of psychopaths, okay, a bunch of Satanists, psychopaths, all right, a bunch of demons, okay, and that's Esau Edom, the so-called white man, okay, who's in the earth doing the work of Satan with all, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, okay, as it speaks of in 2 Thessalonians 2. You see that? And so, going back, 2nd Ezra 9 and verse 3 in the GNT again, it says, there will be earthquakes, national rebellions, international intrigues, okay, unstable leaders, all right, unstable leaders. We definitely see that in the earth is out of days as well. Unstable leaders coming out of this, coming out of this beast system, America, NATO, and the EU, and especially out of this current Trump administration. Okay, when you look at a lot of these people that Trump has appointed into office, which ultimately we know it was the small heads that appointed all these different heads into office, including Trump himself. Okay, you look at people like of course Trump himself. Okay, you look at people like Nero 47, Trump himself, Pete Hegseth, okay, Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, for example, all these different people that Trump appointed within his cabinet, right? You look at them and you listen to them on TV or certain videos on the internet, you clearly see that these people are unstable, okay? They're not fit to rule or run anything. And these people, at the end of the day, they're a bunch of psychopaths and a bunch of Satanists, okay? And literally, when you look at this current Trump administration and even the previous administration as well, and ultimately all these administrations throughout America's history, okay, these different presidencies, these different government structures, whether Democrat or Republican, but especially more so right now in 2026, it looks like, one big SNL show, okay? This current society that we live in under the rulership of Esau Edom, especially in 2026, is literally, it literally looks like one big South Park episode, okay, with the leaders getting on TV, looking like one big SNL skit, okay? This world, as scripture says in, what's it, 1 John 5? First John. Yep, this is 1 John chapter 5. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 19, it says, and we know that the Son of Yahweh is come. That's verse 20. 1 John 5, verse 19, and we know that we are of Yahweh Shema Shai, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. See that? And that's speaking to us, the hopeful elect. We know that we're of Yahweh Shema Shai through the Spirit, right? Like it speaks of in Romans 8 chapter. Our spirit bears witness that we are the children of the Most High, roughly paraphrasing it. Okay. We, the hopeful elect, the remnant of the nation of Israel, we know that we're of Yahweh Shema Shai, okay, through receiving the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, right? This truth, this gospel, this testimony, the eye salve, okay, the understanding of prophecy, and the understanding of the world that surrounds us, right? And we know that we are of Yahweh Shema Shai, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. See that? This whole entire world, the four corners of the earth, under the rulership of Esau Edom, lieth in wickedness. Okay, because what this earth is ruled over by the wicked. It's given into the hand of the wicked, which is Esau Edom, the so-called white man, pursuant to Malachi 1 verse 4. Literally tells you in Malachi 1 verse 4 that Esau Edom by name, okay, is the border of wickedness. Meaning what? Wherever Esau will rule at throughout the four corners of the earth, wickedness will follow. Okay, even going back to the time of the Greeks in the book of First Maccabee, the first chapter. Okay, when the Greeks came into power, which who ruled over ancient Greece? Esau Edom, the Edomites. Okay, it tells you what? That evils were multiplied in the earth. Okay, and that was back then during that time. And how much more in this time, as this current world is ruled over by the revival of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, the Greco-Roman system. Okay, which is what? America, Babylon the Great. Okay, this is the revival of ancient Rome and ancient Greece all over again. All right, by the biblical Edomites, that which is then is now. Okay, and so evils have multiplied in the earth at an all-time high and is out of days. Okay, and that's why, again, you look at this current world, you look at the people walking by to and fro throughout this society, you look at the so-called high holidays that's celebrated in this society, You look at the leaders of this world ran by Esau Edom. It looks like nothing but one big South Park episode and one big SNL skit. Okay? And so that's why, this is why we, the hopeful elect of Yahweh Shema Shai, we sigh and cry daily for the Most High Yahweh to send Yahweh Shai back to do away with all this wickedness and BS and confusion that's going on throughout the earth. Okay? All this instability, all these wars, rumors of war, all this confusion, all this pestilence, right? All this wickedness and evil being done throughout the earth. Okay? It's all going to be done away with when the Most High Yahweh sends Yahweh Shai back, okay, to this earthly realm and meet this world not as a man, okay? And that's what we, the hopeful elect, sigh and cry for daily, day and night, all right? So going back to 2nd Esdras 9 and verse 3 in the GNT, again it says, there will be earthquakes, national rebellions, international intrigues. It says unstable leaders and confused rulers. Okay. Matter of fact, as the scripture says in Isaiah 19, as scripture says in Isaiah the 19th chapter, okay, speaking of unstable leaders, right, and confused rulers, right? This is Isaiah chapter 19. Isaiah 19 in verse 11. Okay, this is speaking of the modern day spiritual Egypt, which is America, right? Isaiah 19 verse 11. Surely the princes of Zoan are fools. The counsel of the wise the counsel of the wise counselors of Pharaoh is become brutish. Okay, and who's the modern day Pharaoh over this modern day Egypt? Esau Edom, the so-called white man. All right. Even the Apostle Paul in the book of Romans, the 9th chapter, alluded to Esau Edom being like to Pharaoh in ancient Egypt. Okay, well, the Most High raised him up, okay, to ultimately show his power upon Pharaoh. And the Lord did that upon ancient Pharaoh of ancient Egypt during the Exodus. And guess what? The Lord Yahweh Shema Shai has raised up Esau Edom in his latter days, okay, over this modern day Egypt, like it to the modern day Pharaoh. Okay, and the Lord is ready to show his power once again upon this modern day Pharaoh Esau Edom. Okay, through the same power that he used upon ancient Pharaoh in ancient Egypt, which is what? His angel, his right hand, which is Yahweh Shai. Okay, because who was at the forefront of the Most High Yahweh bringing judgment and taking down those ancient Egyptians? Okay, that angel of the Lord. Okay, that visited Moses in a burning bush, and that was Yahweh Shai. Okay, that same angel that the Lord said he put his name into. All right. Well, guess what? It's going to be that same angel, Yahweh Shai, that the Most High Yahweh is going to use to bring judgment and take down this modern day spiritual Egypt, America, and only deliver his elect of the nation of Israel out of this modern day Egypt. You see that? And so, as it says again, Isaiah 19 verse 11, surely the princes of Zoan are fools. Okay, and Zoan, when you go into it, was a capital city of ancient Egypt. Okay, it was a capital city where many of the pharaohs met up at. Okay, and as well as the priesthood of ancient Egypt, to consult together to see how they were going to forward their witchcraft and their magic over their kingdom. Okay, as well as continue to oppress their subjects of their kingdom, primarily the Israelites. Right, and today, here in America, this modern day spiritual Egypt, Zoan, okay, the modern day Zoan of America would be likened to Washington D.C. Okay, because that's where the president dwells at primarily here in America, as well as the majority of the government structure. Okay, and as well, not to mention, Washington D.C. was built off of many Egyptian and ancient Babylonian witchcraft and idols, right? Because over there in Washington, D.C., you have the George Washington Monument, which goes back to the ancient Egyptian obelisk, right? And then not to mention, the official colors of America is what? Red, white, and blue. Well, guess what? That goes back to ancient Egypt, okay? Ancient Egypt had red, white, and blue, okay? And as well, even the use of the eagle. Okay, Esau Edom, as it speaks of in Obadiah, he loves to exalt himself as the eagle, right? But guess what? When you go into it, ancient Egypt represented themselves like into an eagle. You see that? So, hey, that puts this down. All right, I'm gonna let this pass. All right. So again, Isaiah 19, verse 11. Surely the princes of Zoan are fools. The counsel of the wise counselors of Pharaoh is become brutish. How say ye unto Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of ancient kings? As a matter of fact, let's read that verse in NLT. Let's see. Isaiah 19, verse 11 in the NLT. It says, what fools are the officials of Zoan? Okay. Their best counsel to the king of Egypt is stupid and wrong. And you see, hey, a prime example is what we see going on over there in Iran. Okay, the whole reason for the U.S. bombing Iran, right, waging war with Iran is stupid and is wrong. Because number one, they're being drawn out into war with Iran by the small heads, right? The least of the flock shall draw them out, like we always bring out in Jeremiah. Okay, and number two, they're ultimately fighting in that war to do the interest and the bidding of the small heads. Okay, because here it is. This Trump administration is pushing out that the reason why they're waging war with Iran and bombing Iran is to still say overthrow the regime, right, and bring forth a new regime, right? Because the current regime out there in Iran is so say terrorizing the people of Iran. They're oppressing them, right? They're doing ill will to them. Meanwhile, look at what this current government is here in America is doing to its own people. Okay, slashing jobs left and right. Okay? Slashing jobs left and right. Okay, putting more hell upon the middle class. All right, pushing out all these different tariffs that's doing nothing but causing more inflation and putting more hell upon the middle class, right? And on top of that, little by little, they're slashing people's benefits, right? Whether it be Medicaid, SNAP, different benefits that many people rely on here in America, even working people, okay? Even a lot of people that work here in this country that work 9 to 5 jobs, hell, even in some cases 2 or 3 jobs, they depend on a lot of these benefits, okay? But while this current administration, they claim to have no money to help their own citizens, to help the middle class and the poor class and all these things. But meanwhile, every time you turn around, okay, they always have millions upon billions of dollars to aid the small hats or to fund wars around the earth or to fund the DHS and these ICE agents and whatnot, okay, constantly going door to door, waging war with American citizens. They have all these billions of dollars to spend on war and violence and folly and to do the bidding of the small heads, but yet, they always claim to have no money to help their own citizens. But yet they're claiming that the regime in Iran is oppressing their own citizens. Meanwhile, look at what America does to its own citizens. Okay, and not to mention, let's not to forget as well, how does this government destroys the air that we breathe, right? It's approved of all these GMOs and fake foods that we eat, right? It's the foul bread, food coloring and food dyes, right? They push all these things that destroy their own citizens, but yet they're making it seem as if governments and regimes around the world, amongst other countries, are destroying their own people. Okay, and we know that that's how Esau loves to push his propaganda. All right, anytime he sets his eyes on invading another country or another region, right? He portrays the leaders of this country as a bunch of demons and a bunch of tyrants and oppressors, right? And he uses that false propaganda, okay, to gain public support to justify his wars throughout the earth. okay, going throughout the earth, robbing, destroying, right? Shedding blood. Hey, but we see this time now it's all backfiring, all right? Because the majority of the American people are against the war with Iran, and on top of that, okay, none of America's so-called plans against Iran are succeeding. You see that? They haven't overthrown the regime, okay? They haven't destabilized the Iranian people or the Iranian government, okay? And on top of that, there are, the oil supply, to here in America has been slashed since the Strait of Hormuz has been closed off, okay? And all that's been doing was, continuing to drive up gas prices, okay? Continue to make America look more and more weak and more embarrassed, okay? Because you even have top, former military men that was in America's military, okay? They're even coming out and saying that as this war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran is continuing to linger longer and longer and escalate, all that's going to do is make Iran look better and better and stronger, and it's going to make America look weaker and weaker. Okay, and now as of recently, now you even have Trump talking about putting boots on the ground out there in Iran. Okay, we know that's all going to lead to what? A draft coming down the pipe, right? And as a matter of fact, speaking of boots on the ground, okay, you even had certain articles coming out as of lately, where now Trump is even looking to deploy Marines out there in Iran to combat, all right, Iran's government. Let me see if I can find that. Let's see. Bear with me for a second. Okay, hold up. Slock it, give me a second. Yep. All right. So, all right. So this is from showing on the screen. All right, Lord willing, y'all can see this. All right. This is from NPRnews.org. And as y'all see the title of the article, okay, U.S. is deploying Marines to, all right, so-called Middle East, which is really West Asia, as it pounds Iran. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit of this article. It goes into the American military has ordered 2,500 Marines and an amphibious assault ship to the so-called Middle East. A U.S. official said Friday in a major addition of forces in the region after nearly 2 weeks of war in Iran. Okay? And I don't have to read no more into it. But yeah, now, okay, the Trump administration is now deploying, okay, as a winning to 2,500 Marines and an amphibious assault ship over there to the so-called Middle East, okay, all to combat Iran. And you see stuff like this is making America look more and more weaker, okay? You couldn't topple their regime, okay? All you did so far was really just bomb a school full of girls. And then now on top of that, now you have to send your Marines out there to combat the Iranian military and the Iranian government. And guess what? That's even going to backfire against America. You see that? Because we're in the time, all right, as we're measuring the time diligently in itself. Okay, ultimately, we're in a time where Esau's blessing, which is his sword, along with his witchcraft, is now starting to wear off. Okay? Esau's sword and his witchcraft is now starting to wear off. Okay? And we see that currently right now with what's going on in Iran. Okay? He no longer has public support when it comes to all these wars he's waging throughout the earth. And on top of that, Esau's sword, little by little, is being challenged out there in Iran. Okay? And now Esau has to come to a point where now he has to send Marines out there in Iran to fight his wars. Okay? To fight wars on behalf of the Somalis. And mind you, by the way, okay, Why is the U.S. opting to send their own troops out there in Iran? Okay, why haven't you seen any talk of Netanyahu and the small hats sending their troops out there in Iran? Okay, to get bombed and destroyed and blown the fuck up. All right, how come the small hats aren't sending their troops out there in Iran to fight in that war? Okay, because ultimately they want the United States to continue doing their bidding and doing their doing their dirty work. Okay, and ultimately this is a bankers' war at the end of the day. Okay, and mind you, as I just showed, okay, Babylon the Great America is now sending Marines, okay, to fight out there in Iran, and ironically, this comes damn near right up the heels of that former retired Marine that was protesting against the war. Okay, I'm sure many of y'all saw that viral video, okay, where you had that former Marine Edomite, okay, protesting against the war in Iran, saying nobody wants this war, okay, and as they were physically dragging him out of the room, okay, they basically broke his arm, right? And it shows, all right, this shows. Okay, let me get this. Yep, this is Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 30. It says, "The mighty men of Babylon, okay, Babylon the Great, America, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight." Okay, look at this fast. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might have failed. See that? Their might have failed. Okay, Esau's military, okay, slowly but surely, not on a major scale per se, but slowly but surely here and there, Esau's might in his sword is failing. Okay, and again, this just further goes to show that we're at the end of Esau's blessing. We're at the end of Esau's world. Okay, anytime you see a nation of people in their blessing waning and waxing worse and worse, okay, getting weaker and weaker, that's a major sign showing you that particular nation of people are at the end of the road. They're at the end of their dominance and rulership, okay, on earth. And as I said again, Jeremiah 51 in verse 30, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might have failed. They became as women. Okay, becoming as women meaning what? Weak, scared, afraid, timid. Okay, because you best believe a lot of these men within Esau's military here in America, from top generals on down to your average soldier or average private or whatever, you best believe they can see that this war with Iran is ultimately going to it's not going to end well for America. It's ultimately going to backfire against America. Okay, because the type of threat or the type of challenge that Iran is presenting to America, okay, the type of threat or the type of challenge that Iran is posing before America is like no other threat that any other country has posed to America all throughout the years, okay? Because even when you deal with the situation of boots on the ground, right, as you have a lot of top former military men in Esau's military, former colonels and whatnot, former generals, okay, they're online saying, and there's many videos you can look up on this, where they're saying that if America does decide to put boots on the ground in mass numbers, right, which we know that's eventually going to come, okay, then what? The terrain out there in Iran alone, it presents a challenge to any invading countries or boots on the ground being waged against Iran, okay, and not to mention the scorching heat out there in Iran presents a challenge as well, okay, and not to mention one of the ways that Iran has been so successful in standing up against America so far is drone warfare, okay? Because though Iran has a large military, up to I believe almost 1 million men within their military, one of the One of the weapons or one of the ways that they're doing to fight against America is using drone warfare rather than traditional boots on the ground. Okay, because when you're fighting against drones in the air, right, you're fighting against something that's literally flying to and fro throughout the air at at high speeds, right? You know, they're hard to see, they're hard to catch, they're hard to shoot out of the air, and at the same time, these things are capable of shooting anything down on the ground that's beneath them. Okay, so that in itself alone is presenting a challenge against the American military in regards to putting boots on the ground. And not to mention, not only does America have to defend itself against the drones of Iran, but then on top of that, you'd have to defend yourself against the actual Iranian military itself. Okay, and the weaponry that they have. Okay, and not to mention, they know the land and they know the terrain out there in Iran. Okay, like the back of their hand. So all in all, okay, this war between the U.S. and Israel versus Iran is all going to backfire against Esau. Okay, it's all going to backfire against the small heads. Okay, and as well, we know ultimately it's all going to lead to eventually Russia getting involved, along with China, along with North Korea, and is eventually going to get nuclear. Okay, it's eventually going to get nuclear, and it's also going to lead to the return of Yahweh Shai to have to come back and deliver the elect, okay, out of America, Babylon the Great, as well as wherever else the elect are scattered at throughout the four corners of the earth. You see that? And so, let's see, where was I at? Yeah, so once again, Jeremiah 51, verse 30, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath failed. They became as women. Okay? They have burned her dwelling places. All right? And so, let's see, I think I was reading in Isaiah 19 earlier. Yep. So this is back in Isaiah 19 in verse 11 in the NLT. It says, "What fools are the officials of Zoan?" Okay, their best counsel to the king of Egypt is stupid and wrong. And again, the Egypt that we read of in Isaiah 19 is speaking of the modern day Egypt. Okay, which is America, Babylon the Great. Okay, the spiritual Sodom and spiritual Egypt, as it speaks of in Revelation 11, verse 8. Okay, this is speaking of America. It says, their best counsel to the king of Egypt, okay, is stupid and wrong. Will they still boast to Pharaoh of their wisdom? Will they dare brag about all their wives and sisters? Okay, yeah, and that's what and that's another thing these Edomites are tapping into under this Trump administration. They're tapping back into that whole Christian nationalist, so-called white supremacist mindset. Okay, the mindset of the so-called white man is great. He's the top nation of men on the earth. He's the smartest. He has the highest IQ, right? That's what these Edomites are tapping into at an all-time high under the Trump administration. You see that? But as I just read, it's all stupid and wrong because what? It's all rooted in lies, pseudoscience, false propaganda, false education, false religion, right? And even as a matter of fact, you even have certain reports coming out where a lot of America's political policies and political agendas are inspired by Edomite Christian evangelists. Okay, because that's one of the major things that Edomite supremacy is rooted in the earth is out of days. All right, plantation Christianity, white Jesus, right? The whole belief that the so-called white man, starting with the Amalek or the Most High's chosen people, right? And everybody else is just a bunch of heathen, a bunch of goyim, right? And the so-called Negroes here in America are Hamites, suffering the curse of Canaan, right? These are the things and more that Edomite supremacy is rooted in, all right? And not to mention the sword, right? Using plantation Christianity to justify coming down with a sword, rape, robbing, murdering, colonizing, pillaging, destroying, enslaving, right? So plantation Christianity has a heavy influence on American policies, right? As a matter of fact, let's see if I can look that up. Okay, so let's see. Alright, so I typed this in on Google. I typed this in on Google. Evangelical Christian American politics. All right, I'm gonna show this to the screen. Well, one of y'all can see this. And as it says, this is from the Google AI overview. It says, so like, let me check the sound real quick, make sure I'm still good. All right, still good. All right, so as it goes into it, says, evangelical Christians have been a dominant conservative voting bloc in American politics since the late 1970s. All right, largely aligned with the Republican Party. Surprise, surprise. To influence policies on, okay, baby deletion, the L to the G to the B to the T, rights, and it says, and religious freedom. It says they form a key base for the GOP, often emphasizing Christian nationalism and favoring candidates like Donald Trump. See that? So evangelical Christians here in America have played a major part in influencing a lot of America's politics, especially from that of the so-called Republican Party. Okay, as a lot of these Republicans boast themselves on being these hardcore Christians and establishing the influence of so-called Jesus Christ here in America. But meanwhile, you notice anytime these Edomites ever try to go into the Bible, it's always for the purpose of justifying war. Okay. These Edomites historically have always used the scriptures to justify waging war, destroying, colonizing, great robbing, murdering. Okay, and it's the same thing even to this very day. Okay, Esau hasn't changed up his playbook. He hasn't stopped being a devil, nor has he stopped being a wicked. Okay, because as a matter of fact, even as the scripture says in Jeremiah. All right, let's get this. Yep, this is Jeremiah chapter 13 and verse 23. It says, can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil. All right, let's NLT that. Jeremiah 13 verse 23 in the NLT. Can an Ethiopian change the color of his skin? Can a leopard take away his spots? Neither can you start doing good, for you have always done evil. Yeah, Esau, Edom. Okay, just like a Ethiopian can't change his skin color, nor can a leopard change his spots from off his body, nor can his devil stop being a wicked, nor can he stop doing evil. Okay, as I said, neither can you start doing good, for you have always done evil. Okay, and even to this very day, this devil has not stopped doing evil. Because ultimately, what? That's what he was created. That's what he was created to do. Okay, be the wicked, be the bad guy of Yahweh Shema Shai's movie. Okay, be the children of Satan on the earth, doing the working of Satan. Okay, this devil Esau Edom, he's literally doing his job to a T, to perfection. Okay, being a perfect devil, the perfect antagonist within the Lord's story. You see that? And so that's why it's evident now more than ever, okay, who the wicked is on the planet Earth. If you're an Israelite, all right, so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American, especially if you know that you're an Israelite in these other days, and you can't see who the wicked is, who the man of sin is, or for whatever reason you can't see that Esau Edom is the wicked, the man of sin, then hey, Yahweh Shema Shai is not dealing with you ultimately at the end of the day. Okay, the Lord has opened up your eyes, okay, to see this world for what it really is. He hasn't opened up your eyes and your understanding to prophecy. He hasn't opened up your eyes and your understanding to the will of Yahweh Shema Shai at the end of the day. Okay, so Esau Edom is showing himself more than now more than ever that he is indeed the wicked, the man of sin. Okay, and even have other Edomites, okay, and other heathen that are on the internet, on these different social media platforms, on YouTube, okay, even using their platforms to speak out against Esau Edom and his elites, the top banking families, all right, the corrupt leaders of Esau Edom. So, these different people on the internet, on these different platforms, they're ultimately making our job as the men of the Lord, the prophets, easier. Okay, they're making our job to expose who the wicked is, a man of sin on the earth in these latter days, easier. Okay, as it tells you in Psalm 64, their own tongue will fall upon themselves, right? So, at the end of the day, everything according to prophecy is all working towards the downfall of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, the wicked, and at the same time, it's all working for the uplifting and the deliverance and the salvation of us, the hopeful elect, okay, through Hamashiach Yahushua. You see that? Move this back up. Some water. All right, so let's get Jeremiah 50. Jeremiah 50. Jeremiah 50, and let's start at 21. All right, Jeremiah 50 in verse 21, it says, go up against the land of Marathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekah. Okay, and who's Marathaim here in Jeremiah 50, verse 21? That's another symbolic name of Babylon the Great, America. Okay, because Marathaim, as we the men of the Lord, always going to, when you go into that word Marathaim in the Hebrew, okay, it's literally pronounced just as that, Marathaim in Allah Shwan Kodash, and it goes into double rebellion. Okay, as a matter of fact, let's just go into it real quick for edification's sake. Right? The word Marathaim in Jeremiah 50, verse 21. Okay. As you can see, well, Willie, y'all can see this. All right. Strong's H4850, Marathaim, and it says double rebellion. Okay. Another name for Babylon. All right. And even down in the Strong's definition, it says double bitterness. Okay, double bitterness. All right. And why is America, okay, likened to bitterness? Right? Because mind you, all right, within the word America itself is the Hebrew word mar, which the Hebrew word mar means what? Bitter. Okay, bitter. Why is America likened to bitter according to the scriptures? Because America, Babylon the Great, has been nothing but a bitter experience to us Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. Okay, because what is the scripture speaks about in the book of Revelation, all right, how Babylon the Great, America, was basically drunken with the blood of the saints. Okay, and who are the saints? The Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, right? And even, matter of fact, even in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, okay, where it talks about the little horn that would come out of the fourth beast, okay, the fourth beast being ancient Western Rome, and the little horn being America, Babylon the Great, the revival of ancient Rome, right? When you read in Daniel, the 7th chapter, it speaks about how this little horn, America, Babylon the Great, would wear out the saints, okay, wear out the saints, wear out the Israelites, okay, and we most certainly are worn out in this place, especially as it's 2026. Okay, worn out from constantly working, having to worry about this, that, and the third. Okay, financial worries, right? Worry about family, family members and things like that. Worry about worry about everything that's lurking around the corner. Okay, having to constantly worry about these people, these crazy people driving down the road. Whenever we're going to and fro from work, or to and fro from whatever business we attend to, right? Everything about America has been nothing but a constant worry and constant bitter experience to us Israelites. And on top of that, okay, it's been the main hub of where many of our people were started at. Okay, throughout these last centuries and generations, as this is the main hub of our captivity. Okay, as it even speaks of in Jeremiah, Judah and Israel were oppressed together here in Babylon and Great America. Okay, but this word Marathayim in Jeremiah 50 verse 21, okay, goes into double rebellion as well as double bitterness. Okay, and why is America likened to double rebellion? Because this is basically, okay, wickedness and rebellion against Yahweh Shemashai on steroids. All right. As a matter of fact, the scriptures even calls America as well the land of Nimrod. Okay, let's get that. Yep, this is the book of Micah, chapter 5. Micah chapter 5 and verse 6, it says, and they shall waste the land of Assyria. Okay, Assyria prophetically can be symbolic of America as well. Okay, it says, and they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the interests thereof. Okay, the land of Nimrod that is speaking to right here is ultimately America. Okay, because Nimrod, when you go into Genesis 10, founded what? Okay, the ancient city of Assyria. Okay, Slakia. Nimrod founded the ancient capital of Nineveh, which is the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Okay, and Nimrod also founded Babel. Okay, the city of Babylon. Okay, and here in America, this is spiritually Nineveh and spiritually Babylon all over again, like into the land of Nimrod as it went into. And mind you, the name Nimrod itself in the Hebrew means what? Rebellion. Okay, Nimrod means rebellion. All right, and here in America, this is the land of rebellion, the land of Nimrod that we just went into. Okay, double rebellion, as it read in Jeremiah 50 and 21, Marathayim, double rebellion, double Nimrod, so to speak. Right, and it says, Micah 5 and 6 again, and they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the interests thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. Hey, and that's ultimately going to be Yahweh Shai Mashiach. Okay, Yahweh Shai is the one that's going to deliver us, the hopeful elect, out of the hand of the modern day Assyrian, which is who? Esau Edom, who rules over America. You see that? And so, all right, so let's go back to Jeremiah. Look this up real quick. All right, so going back to Jeremiah 50 and 21 again, it says, go up against the land of Marathayim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod, okay, which Pekod in the Hebrew means visitation. When you go into it in the blue letter, Pekod means visitation, okay. In Babylon the Great in these outer days would be the main land, okay, that Yahweh Shemashai would visit in his outer days for the purpose of judgment, okay, destruction, and ultimately to turn this place to a lake of fire, all right, by way of thermonuclear missiles, all right, thermonuclear weapons in World War III, all right, along with the fire of the chariots of Yahweh Shai and the holy angels, okay. This is going to be the main land on the earth that's going to be paid a visit by Yahweh Shai when Yahweh Shai returns. Okay, Babylon the Great. All right, and it says, Jeremiah 50 verse 21, go up against the land of Marathayim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod, waste and utterly destroy after them, said the Lord Yahweh, and do according to all that I have commanded thee. All right, and it says, And it says, verse 22, a sound of battle was in the land and of great destruction. Okay, a sound of battle was in the land here in America, Babylon the Great, and it's well throughout different regions of the earth. Okay, with all of Esau's witchcraft, his pseudoscience, okay, his BS, his lies, it's all led to war being stirred up in the earth. And as a matter of fact, okay, as we get in the book of Revelation, the 20th chapter, Revelation 20 and verse 7, it says, and when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Okay, I'm going to read it again. Revelation 20 verse 7, and when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Now, of course, first and foremost, as you know, the men of the Lord, starting with the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of the great millstone, down to the least of us, always break down. Okay, Revelation 20 verse 7, when it says, and when 1,000 years are expired, the 1,000 years referring to what? Okay, the 1,000-year period, okay, where Esau calls the so-called dark ages, or medieval ages, where during that 1,000-year period, it was our people, okay, dark-skinned people, Israelites, who ruled over Europe, Russia, right? And during that 1,000-year period, Esau was living in the caves, okay, the caves of the Caucasus Mountains, living as cavemen, right? Walking on their knuckles, okay, grunting everywhere because they didn't have no formal language or anything, right? Living like beasts, okay. That's what this 1,000 years represents, okay. The so-called Dark Ages, where it was our people that primarily ruled throughout Europe and Russia for a period of 1,000 years, okay. And it says, Revelation 20 verse 7, and when 1,000 years are expired, okay, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Out of Satan, as we always bring out, it's not talking about the literal demon Satan himself, okay, being broken out of some mystical prison from from some mystical place out of the earth, okay, to emerge in the earth and do wickedness throughout the earth. No, the Satan that is speaking of in Revelation 20 verse 7 is speaking of Esau, Edom, okay, the Satan-like man. When you go into that word Satan in the blue letter in the Greek, okay, it's talking about the Satan-like man, which is who? Esau, Edom, the man of sin. All right, the one who will come to do the working of Satan, pursuant to 2 Thessalonians, 2nd chapter. Okay, and when did Esau, Edom, the Satan-like man, okay, be loose out of his prison? At the beginning of the so-called Renaissance period, okay, of the 1400s, right, late 1300s or early 1400s, give or take, right? And what did Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, do when he came, all right, out of the Caucasus Mountains during the Renaissance period? He brought back those ancient Greco-Roman philosophies and ideas and ways, okay, the pseudoscience, right, and made them flourish throughout the earth, okay, and using those ancient Greco-Roman ways and philosophies and pseudoscience to justify colonizing throughout the earth, removing landmarks, stealing lands, rape, robbery, and murder, enslave, commit genocide, right? So it says again, Revelation 20 verse 7, and when 1,000 years are expired, okay, the so-called Dark Ages, right, Satan, Esau, Edom, the Satan-like man, shall be loosed out of his prison, starting with the so-called Renaissance period, okay? And it says, verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, all right? So Esau, Edom, from the time of the Renaissance up until this very day in 2026, has done nothing but deceive the earth and destroy the earth, right? Push nothing but pseudoscience, lies, deception all throughout the earth, okay? And now he even has AI, okay? He's used religion, all right, plantation Christianity and the Catholic Church as a major instrument to forward and push his lies, right? White Jesus, Christianity, portraying the Most High and the Son looking like so-called white men, portraying the angels that's looking like so-called white babies with wings on their backs, shooting bow and arrows at people, right? And those are just a few examples of the lies of Esau, Edom, right? Pushing their pseudoscience, okay, the whole IQ thing, labeling Jake as as low IQ and savages and inferior, incapable of learning, okay, and even using false propaganda in his false media to scoff at kings, right? Scoff at different leaders and rulers throughout different countries in the earth, and use that to justify waging war throughout the four corners of the earth. You see that? A war at a time where all of Esau's deception, right? Let's read it again. Revelation 20, verse 8, it says, "It shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth." Okay, Gog and Magog, all right? Gog and Magog, which Gog and Magog, pursuant to Ezekiel 38, represents what? Russia, okay? Gog and Magog in end time prophecy represents Russia, okay? When you look at an ancient map of, where, okay, because Gog ultimately goes back to what? One of the sons of Japheth, all right? Now, when you look up the region where Gog, okay, the ancient nation of Gog ruled at, okay, on an ancient map, it points to modern day Russia, southern Russia, okay? So when you go into Ezekiel 38, where it speaks about Gog and Magog, right, in the latter days, that's not speaking of the descendants of Japheth being a major player in end time prophecy. No, it's speaking to the inhabitants of the land of Gog in these latter days being a major player in end time prophecy, which is who? The Russians, which are Edomites, okay? So Revelation 20, verse 8 again, it shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, which is Russia, okay, to gather them together to battle, and the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. See that? So all of Esau's BS, all of his lies, his deception, his pseudoscience, his AI, his MOTV system, his NWO agenda, right? All of Esau's wickedness and his evil works done under the sun would all ultimately lead to war being stirred up in the earth. World War III, which is going to be nuclear, okay? And especially war against Russia, okay? Gog and Magog, as we just read, all right? And of course, not only Russia, but of course, Iran, China, North Korea, India, Pakistan, all right? And various other nations that's hostile against America, these different BRICS nations, okay? And then, of course, we know, according to prophecy as well, that very soon, a lot of these, Arab nations, Muslim nations are going to turn cold on America as well and join with Iran and Russia and China. Because, mind you, another thing about that war with Iran that's making America look bad as well is how Iran, as of lately, has been going around bombing these different, U.S. bases that's in these different Arab nations, Dubai, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, so on and so forth. Iran has been bombing, many U.S. bases within the so-called Middle East, right, West Asia, and not to mention as well, they've also been bombing many oil tankers and oil vessels within the Persian Gulf as well as the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, and so as Iran is wreaking all that carnage, right? A lot of these different Arab nations that's been rubbing elbows with America, such as Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Dubai, the UAE, for example. They're now looking at the situation like, look, America can't protect our interests in our oil from a hostile nation such as Iran. So it's going to come to a point very soon where these Arab nations are going to come to the conclusion where, well, look, what's the point of continuing to make particular deals with America and rub elbows with America if America can't even protect their own bases in our countries, as well as protect our own oil reserves in our own countries from Iran? We might as well just join with Iran. You see that? And that's what a lot of these Arab nations are going to do very, very soon coming down the pipe. Okay? In 2nd Esdras, the 15th chapter, speaks to that. You see that? But as it's going into in Revelation 20, verse 8 again, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. Verse 9, and they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. All right, what's the beloved city? Babylon the Great America. Okay, and it says, and fire came down from the Most High Yahweh out of heaven and devoured them. Who's it them that the fire is going to come down and devour? America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and what's the fire that Yahweh Shema Shah is going to use to devour Babylon the Great? Okay, hypersonic nuclear missiles in general, nuclear warheads. Okay, they're countries by the likes of Russia, China, North Korea, and these various nations are going to shoot upon America, okay, to destroy this place and turn this place to a complete lake of fire. All right, and as well, even in Revelation the 17th chapter, it speaks about how America's NATO and EU allies are going to aid in the destruction of America, Babylon the Great. Okay, the beast shall hate the whore. You see that? So Yahweh Shema Shah is going to turn this place to a lake of fire. Okay, not only using the various nations that's hostile against America, such as Russia and China and Iran, for example, North Korea, but he's even going to use America's European allies to aid in the destruction of this place. All right, all to fulfill the will of Yahweh Shema Shah upon Babylon the Great America. You see that? And so let's go back to Jeremiah 50. A sip of water. All right, Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 22. A sound of battle was in the land and of great destruction. Okay, verse 23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? All right, that's America, Babylon the Great. This place is slowly but surely, okay, the hammer of the earth, America. Because mind you, all right, if you're a hammer, then that means what? Any and every problem throughout the earth looks like a nail. Meaning what? You got to go throughout the earth and completely smash it, destroy it, and obliterate it. And that's how America has pretty much gained its dominance throughout the earth for so many decades and so long time. Just going throughout the earth, okay, using its air force to bomb and destroy countries, right? Using its military to invade different countries, overthrow governments, and set up puppet regimes, right? And exploit the land and exploit the people of the land, steal resources and control resources, control oil reserves, right? America for a long time has been likened to the hammer of the earth, right? Making everything look like a nail. But as it says, again, Jeremiah 50 verse 23, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among nations? See that? And that's what's happening to America right now. Its power and its dominance is being more and more challenged in these latter days. These weak nations are now saying that they're strong. Iran, North Korea, okay, Syria, right? A lot of these smaller nations that have, for so long time have, pretty much kept silence against America. Now they're openly talking shit against America. Okay, you got Kim Jong-un out there in North Korea, openly talking shit against America. Iran is constantly talking shit against America. Okay, and various other smaller nations. All right, because what? This whole world can see slowly but surely that America's dominance and power is now waxing weaker and weaker throughout the earth. Okay, it is out of days. And again, as that war between the U.S. and Iran is going to linger longer and longer, all it's going to do is make America look weaker and weaker and weaker. All right, because it's going to show the whole world that here it is. America for a long time has been boasting and having, the most powerful military on the earth, the most powerful air force on the earth, the most powerful navy on the earth. But yet, they can't stand their own against a small country like Iran. Okay, that's going to make America's power and dominance look more and more weaker in these latter days. Okay, and make America look more and more like an embarrassment throughout the earth. Okay, because here it is: if America can barely withstand, okay, the resistance from Iran, then how do you think America can withstand an actual physical war against Russia and China, for example, right? It's all going to go south, okay? And that's exactly what Yahweh Shema Shah wants this place to go, south, destruction, okay? It says again, Jeremiah 50 verse 23, How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? All right, and that's getting ready to come to America. Desolation, complete wilderness, complete desert. All right, when the Lord destroys this place by way of thermonuclear missiles, as well as the fire from the chariots of Yahweh and the holy angels. Okay, it says, verse 24, Jeremiah 50, verse 24, I have laid a snare for thee. Thou art also taken, O Babylon. Okay, and thou was not aware. And what is the snare that Yahweh Shema Shah has laid for Babylon the Great America? Okay, the Lord is using America's pride as a snare, is using its arrogance as a snare. Because what does the scripture say in the book of Proverbs? Okay, pride go before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. You see that? Any and every kingdom throughout history that's always got puffed up in pride. Okay, especially when it came to rebellion against Yahweh Shema Shai. Eventually, Yahweh Shema Shai always destroyed that empire. Okay, he's always brought destruction and desolation upon any kingdom or empire that's always waxed proud against him. And as a matter of fact, even as it speaks of in the book of Sirach, the 10th chapter. Okay, Sirach chapter 10. Sirach chapter 10, and let's see. Okay, Sirach 10 and verse 13, it says, for pride is the beginning of sin, and he that hath it shall pour out abomination. You know, Esau Edom, for example. And Esau Edom is the most prideful nation of men on the earth. And therefore what? All throughout the earth, they pour forth nothing but what? Abominations. Okay? You know, wicked satanic works, odious works, idol worship, right? Defiled bread, defiled food, defiling the air. Okay? Now, Esau Edom wants to take it a step even further. Well, now he wants to create mankind in his left-hand image. Okay, to bring forth even more abominations in the earth. Okay, all because of Esau's pride. It says again, Sirach 10 in verse 13, for pride is the beginning of sin. Right? For pride is the beginning of sin, and he that hath it shall pour out abomination. And therefore the Lord brought upon them strange calamities and overthrew them utterly. So we see, Esau Edom here in America, as well as the small heads, all right, in their pride and their arrogancy, they're seeking to overthrow any and every government structure that's against their NWO agenda and against their blessing. But guess what? Yahweh Shema Shai has Esau in the snare, getting ready to overthrow Esau Edom out of his rulership. You see that? As well as overthrow his pride, humble Esau down, right? And it says, verse 14, the Lord Yahweh hath cast down the thrones of proud princes and set up the meek in their stead. The Lord hath plucked up the roots of the proud nations and planted the lowly in their stead. Verse 16, the Lord Yahweh Shema Shah overthrew countries of the heathen and destroyed them to the foundations of the earth. You see that? And so that's literally a cycle that's constantly happened all throughout history. You know, the Lord will set up a particular heathen nation in power, and over his people. Okay, then eventually over time, that heathen nation will get proud. They will wax proud and rebel against the Lord, and then eventually what? It will come to the point where the Lord would have to take them down and destroy them and destroy their rulership. You see that? And Babylon the Great America is literally no different. Okay. The rulership of Esau Edom is literally no different. The Lord's getting ready to do the same thing that he's done back in times past upon Esau Edom in this current time. Okay, like the scriptures even says in the book of Ecclesiastes, the Lord required that which is past. You see that? Right. So going back to Jeremiah 50. Jeremiah 50 in verse 24 again. It says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon. and thou was not aware, thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord Yahweh Shemashah. Yep. So all that rebellion, done by Esau Edom, who rules over Babylon the Great, it's all led to Esau Edom being caught in his outer days, being put in the snare. Okay. Esau's been caught and been found red-handed, literally. Okay. So now we're at a point to where now it's all leading to his downfall, right? Esau's being cast down. The man of sin is being exposed, right? Even as it says in Isaiah 29, the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, right? Esau's dominance and his influence throughout the earth and his witchcraft, it's all being cast down and being brought down simply through the preaching of the word by the men of the Lord. And it's all going to lead to Yahweh Shai coming back to destroy this devil physically with the brightness of his coming. You see that? And there's nothing that these Edomites or any of these heathen nations or these heathen nations could do to remove their necks from the Lord's judgments. As a matter of fact, let's get that. Okay? Speaking of removing their necks, right? Was that the book of Micah? Yep. This is the book of Micah, chapter 2. In verse 1, it says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. Okay? And beds represents what? Comfort or rest. All right? And Esau Edom for so long time has been in his comfort or his rest. Okay? His rulership, his blessing. But now, when the time when Esau Edom is now being taken out of his comfort, he's being disquieted, as it speaks of in this scripture that speaks about that in the book of Job. He shall not feel quietness in his belly. Roughly paraphrased, I believe that's in Job 20, if I'm not mistaken. But Esau Edom, he's no longer in his rest. Okay, he knows that he has but a short time left. Okay, he knows he has to move with warp speed to roll out his NWO agenda and the MOTB. And as you can see, Esau's moving about his agenda sloppily. Okay, hey, as we've been seeing over these past weeks and whatnot, you've been hearing talks of possible Iranian sleeper cells and Tia attacks and all these things, which we know, we the hopeful elect men of the Lord, as Scripture says, we're not ignorant of the device of Satan. We know that should there come possible Tia attacks or black swan events coming down in their pipe, right, which it is coming, we know that ultimately Esau Edom in the left hand has their hand in it in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Esau is going to use these black swan events and these Tia attacks to justify shutting everything down, to justify doing away with the Constitution, right? To justify coming with left hand peace and safety, all right, to further speed up his NWO agenda, okay, and to set up the MOTB system, right? But the way that Esau is going about it is all sloppy. Okay, look at that so-called shooting that took place about a couple weeks ago down there in Austin, Texas. Supposedly, it was a guy from Senegal. Okay, which when you look at his picture, it could be a Hamite, could be a Jake. You never know. But supposedly, the guy went to a bar down there in Austin, Texas. Okay, and offed a bunch of people. I believe around 14 people, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, but the guy, he did it. Okay, while walking around with the hoodie on that said "Property of Allah." Now, first and foremost, what Muslim around the world or around the country, Babylon the Great, okay, whether they be, actual Ishmaelite, okay, or some heathen nation, or Hamite, or even Jake, right? But what Muslim, walks around with the shirt on that says "Property of Allah," and then much more, goes around with that so-called shirt and goes and shooting off a bunch of people, okay? What Muslim goes around doing that? You see, but that's all in some way, shape, or form being done by the left hand. Okay, Esau Edom has his hand in these different shootings and these black swan events and stabbings and whatnot. Okay, and as well, even as of recently, you had a shooting that took place up there in Michigan at some small hat synagogue up there in Michigan, and as well, you had a shooting that took place out there in Virginia at the University of Old Dominion University. And when you look at the so-called picture of the alleged shooter out there in the Old Dominion, it looked like a so-called melanated man. Looked like a so-called Jake or Hamite or whatever the case may be. But we know that Esau is going to use these particular shootings, right, with these dark faces that he's putting as the suspect of these shootings to eventually come after Jake. Okay, to come after Jake, to come after Jacob, and especially come after us, the hopeful elect, the men of the Lord, right, to accuse us, make us an offender for a word, okay, and look to blame any and everybody that he can, okay, to take the attention off of Esau and all the BS that he's been caught up doing throughout the earth. You see that? Esau's going to push out any and every propaganda that he can to make everybody else look bad, whether it be Ishmael, Jake, Moab, whatever the case may be, all to take the attention off of him, okay, as he's being caught out and being made to look bad more and more in his outer days, okay? So Esau ultimately, he's at the end of the line, but this is, again, Micah 2 verse 1, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. Okay, showing you how diabolical and how much of a psychopath Esau is. Okay, he's waking up in the morning, doing wickedness, destroying lives, destroying children, all simply because he has the power to do it. Okay, these Edomites are complete psychopaths. Starting with Amalek, of course, okay, who's spearheading this wicked satanic system that this world is governed underneath, right? They wake up every day in the morning, okay, going throughout the earth, doing wickedness, destroying the earth, destroying lives, destroying children, okay, all simply because they have the power to just do it, okay, and they do it for fun. You see that? It says, verse 2, and they covet fields and take them by violence. Okay, use it as sword. Esau's blessing. It says, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. And a great example of that is what he did to our people. Okay, especially the tribe of Gad, so-called Native Americans. They oppressed Gad in his own land, the land that we know today as so-called North America, right? Oppressed him in his own land, in his own country, oppressed his heritage, right? They stripped Gad away from their Hebrew Israelite heritage, their original languages, right? Sent him to reform schools to take on Esau's ways and Esau's customs, right? And form them into the image of the beast, right? And it says, verse 3, therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, behold, against this family do I devise an evil. See that? Against this family, Esau, Edom, does Yahweh Shema Shai devise evil against, right? And it says, 3 verse 3 again, Micah 3 verse 3, therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, against this family do I devise an evil from which ye shall not remove your necks, neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil. You see that? So, hey, Yahweh Shema Shai has Esau, Edom in a snare, in a trap, to where there's nothing that Esau can do to remove his neck from the judgment that Yahweh Shema Shai has set for him. Okay? Exposure at an all-time high, shameful spewing, okay? Nuclear destruction, okay? The return of Yahweh Shai and the holy angels, all right? All these things all point to the downfall and ultimate destruction of Esau, Edom. And there's nothing that these Edomites can do to remove their necks from their judgment. Okay, they can't hide under these underground bunkers, nor these space stations, because guess what? Regardless of wherever these Edomites try to hide from their judgment, whether it be up in the heavens or down into the earth, okay, Yahweh Shema Shai and his elect, when we receive their power, we're going to seek them out. Okay, grab them out of their bunkers or their space stations, okay, and the elites of Esau Edom are going to be our first fruit slaves in the kingdom of heaven, okay, point blank period. And they cannot and will not remove their necks from their judgment, point blank period, okay. All right, so let me get this. Let me get this in Job 20. Yep, it was in Job 20. Let me read this real quick. This is Job 20. Job chapter 20 and verse 19. It says, because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor. This is speaking about the wicked in this chapter. Okay, when you go up to verse 4 in Job 20, it says what? Rather verse 5 in Job 20 verse 5, it says what? That the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. Right? Esau Edom, the so-called white man. His triumphing is only for a short time from this point going forward. Okay, and all of its hypocrisy, its deception, its wickedness, its witchcraft, its pseudoscience, okay, it's all getting ready to be rooted out of the earth upon the return of Yahweh Shah. You see that? But jumping down to back to verse 19, Job 20, verse 19, because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, because he had violently taken away an house which he builded not. Hey, we just read that in Micah the 2nd chapter. Okay, because he had violently taken, as I said again, because he had violently taken away an house which he builded not. Okay, oppressing the man in his heritage, as we read in Micah 2 earlier, right? It says, verse 20, surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desired. Okay, these Edomites, starting with their elite, they're no longer feeling quietness in their belly. Okay, they're wearied in the multitude of their counsels, as it speaks of in Isaiah 47. They see the elect waking up more and more in these outer days. Okay, they see their sword and their blessing is waning more and more in these outer days. Okay, and ultimately, they know and understand, according to prophecy, the same prophecies that we're reading of in the Bible, that ultimately they have but a short time left. Okay, the whole world is rising up against Esau Edom. The whole world is catching on to the ways of Esau Edom and how Esau works, and all of his violence and pseudoscience and his wickedness that he does throughout the earth. This whole earth is caught on to the devil. Okay, and of course it's all come off of the backs and the labors of the men of the Lord, starting with the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Okay, that I learned this truth from, all the way down to the least of us that are up the hopeful elect. You see that? And hey, real quick, as it was told to the Apostle Paul, okay, this truth is pretty much turning the whole world upside down. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Yep. This is Acts chapter 17. Acts chapter 17 and verse 6. It says, as a matter of fact, I'm going to start at verse 5. Acts 17, verse 5. But the Jews which believed not, moved with envy, took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, and gathered a company, and set all the city on an uproar, and assaulted the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. Verse 6. And when they found them not, they drew Jason and certain brethren unto the rulers, of the city, crying, these that have turned the world upside down are come hither also. You see that? And that was speaking of the Apostle Paul and his men, during this time. But guess what? In this current time, they're speaking towards the hopeful elect. Okay, through this word in this gospel that we preach in the name of Yahweh Shema Shai, we, the men of the Lord, are literally turning Esau's world upside down. Okay, we're literally speaking the downfall of Esau's blessing and Esau's rulership into existence. And as we see here in 2026, we clearly see that being made more and more manifest right before our very eyes. We're literally seeing the downfall of our enemies right before our very eyes. Hey, call Haloyim La, Yahweh Shema Shai. You see that? And all we've had to do was just simply preach the word, And so going back to Job 20, In verse 20 again, surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desired. Okay, Esau is not going to be able to save or preserve any of his wicked plans or agendas that is desires to establish on earth. Okay, to forward his NWO agenda, right? And it says, verse 21, there shall none of his meat be left, therefore shall no man look for his goods. Okay, verse 22, in the fullness of his sufficiency he shall be in straits. And what's the fullness of Esau's sufficiency? When he sets up his NWO agenda. Okay, do away with the Constitution, set up a global technocracy throughout the earth, governed by a digital system, biometric system, technocrats, AI, and ultimately what? The MOTB, the microchip, right? In the fullness of Esau's sufficiency, he's going to be in straits, meaning what? A position of difficulty, okay? Because what? The Lord's going to throw in a monkey wrench to interfere with Esau's plan, okay? And what's one of the monkey wrenches, so to speak, that the Lord's going to throw in to interfere with Esau's NWO agenda? It says, in the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. And as we always bring out, that word wicked in Job 20, verse 22 is the Hebrew word imal, which means the working man, the workman, okay, the laborer. Basically speaking to what? The working class, the middle class, right, which is being more and more grinded down to powder, more and more these other days. Well, guess what? There's going to be a lot of these same working class people, especially working class Edomites. These red-blooded, patriotic, MAGA Edomites, okay, they're struggling on a job or losing their jobs left and right. They're going to be at the forefront of the sedition that's spoken of in 2 Ezra 15. Okay, they're going to be taken to the streets, okay, armed to the teeth, rising up against their own government, against their own president, against their own leaders, right? And going all out, okay, bringing forth all kinds of anarchy and chaos into the streets, okay. And there's going to be, things like that that's going to put the elites of Esau Edom in straits as they seek to roll out the NWO agenda here in America, Babylon the Great. Okay, the people rising up against the government, right? These red-blooded Edomites at the forefront of that. Okay, sedition, civil war, chaos, right? And mind you, there's been certain talk buzzing around the internet, okay, over these past few months. Well, under this Trump administration, we're seeing, okay, World War III, a civil war, okay, and as well economic wars being stirred up all throughout the earth, as well as here in America, all under his administration. Okay, this war going on all throughout the earth and all throughout America under this current Trump administration. You see, but again, that's what the ways of Esau Edom, the devil, always leads to: war, strife, contention. Okay, wars and rumors of war, death. Okay, division everywhere, peace being taken out of the earth. That's what the ways of Esau Edom has always led to. Okay, and that's why this earth, okay, the whole creation groaning to this very day and is crying out for the sons of Yahweh Shema Shai to be the next rulers of the earth. Okay, starting with the son of the Most High God, Yahweh, which is Yahweh Shai. Okay, this earth is crying out for the true Israelites to come into power again, for peace to be established. Okay, and that's only going to be established through Yahweh Shai and the tabernacle of David, the 144,000. You see that? And it continues to read Job 20 and verse 23. When he is about to fill his belly, Yahweh shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him and shall rain it upon him while he is eating. So when these Edomites, when they roll out their beginning stages of the NWO agenda, okay, the MOTB, AI infrastructure, right, social credit scores, okay, biometric systems, mass AI surveillance. Hey, that's when Yahweh Shema Shai is going to make his move, okay, to pop off, World War III in the valley of Jehoshaphat, okay, and rain down those missiles upon Esau Edom here in America, okay, and bring an official end to Edomite supremacy, starting with the destruction of Babylon the Great America, and as well the destruction of the current land of Israel. ruled by the small heads. All right. It says, verse 24, he shall flee from the iron weapon, and the bow of steel shall strike him through. And of course, what's the iron weapon and the bow of steel talking about? Thermonuclear missiles, hypersonic nuclear missiles. Okay, that's going to be the main instrument that Yahweh Shema Shah is going to use, okay, to destroy Edomite supremacy, and especially Babylon and Great America. Okay, the bow of steel, right? The bow of steel, okay, and the iron weapon, which again is thermonuclear missiles. You see that? Hypersonic nuclear missiles that's going to be shot off from countries such as Russia, China, North Korea, India, Pakistan, and even America's European allies. Okay, that have nuclear arsenal. You see that? You know, and you know what? Let me just end it off on this. Okay. Let me just end it off on this. Since we started in 2nd Ezra 9, we might as well finish it off in 2nd Ezra 9, right? So this is back in, matter of fact, let's go back to the GNT. Okay, 2nd Ezra 9 and verse 4 in the GNT, it says, you will know that they are what the Most High Yahweh has spoken about since the beginning of creation. The beginning and the end of everything that happens in this world are clear. Okay, the end is manifest as it reads verse 5 in the KJV, right? It's clear to us, the hopeful elect, that is. Okay, those of us that have eyes to see and ears to hear. Okay, verse 6, the same is true in the world above. Wonders and miracles show the beginning of events. All right, and mighty signs show when they end. Okay, the ending shall be with signs and effects, as it reads in the KJV. Because you best believe, as Esau's at the end of his line, at the end of his world, at the end of his blessing, this devil's not going to go down without a fight. Okay, he's going to come with all power, signs, and lying wonders after the energy of Satan. Okay, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness, he's going to come with miracles on the left hand side, counterfeit miracles, counterfeit power. Right. So therefore, what? It only makes sense that when Esau comes with this move and come with his left-handed miracles, the Yahweh Shema Shah is going to come with miracles on the right-hand side on behalf of his elect. Okay, us, the hopeful elect, the remnant. You see that? And it says, verse 7, some people will escape destruction and be saved by their good works or by their faith. All right, and that's the elect. Only the elect are the ones that's putting in good works to Yahweh Shema Shah and putting in faith to Yahweh Shema Shah in his outer days. So only the elect are going to be the ones that's worthy to escape the destruction that's coming down the pipe. It says all of them will survive the dangers I have described and will enjoy the salvation provided in the land that I have set apart from eternity as my own. Verse 9, then those who have ignored my ways and held them in contempt will be surprised when they find themselves in continual torment. Okay, talking about the 2/3 of our people. They're going to die in their unfaithfulness, right? As you read in 2nd Ezra 15. Okay. And I can pretty much continue reading on. But, yeah, But overall, the point is that hey, 2026 going forward, we're at the end of Esau's world. Okay, the elect are rising up more and more in these outer days through the Holy Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, right? Perfecting themselves to the day of salvation when Yahweh Shai returns. Okay, getting themselves right within His grace period, renewing their minds, making their bodies a living sacrifice, right? Knowing what manner of person we ought to be. Okay. And as we're continuing doing these good works before Yahweh Shema Shai, Esau, Edom, and the rest of our enemies are waxing worse and worse in these outer days, and the Lord is bringing them down more and more in these outer days to raise up His elect. You see that? And so, so with that, Lord willing, this camp speaking was edifying. Before I close out, I want to say, Call Halayim La, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaRakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. Kwam Yasha'Allah, Abad Babal, and until next time, Lord willing, Shalom.